Call this meeting to order. Welcome to those of you that are joining us both here and also online. You can find our agenda and follow along online under the School Board tab at bismarckschools.org. Dr. Scher, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Hager?
Here.
Mr. Eastgate?
Here.
Mr. Lee?
Here.
Mrs. Peterson?
Here.
Ms. Presky?
Let the record show Ms. Presky is absent. Dr. Fosnot, would you lead us in the pledge?
Yes.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 1C is BPS's mission, vision, and values. The BPS mission is to empower every learner to thrive. The BPS vision states, together, our strong relationships build inclusive, collaborative, and innovative environments that create agency and inspire a passion for learning, excellence, and discovery. BPS values include our inclusion, excellence, innovation, and leadership. You'll also find a link in the agenda to the BPS strategic plan. Item 2 is to adopt the agenda. What are the wishes of the board? Mr. Eastgate.
I move that we adopt the agenda.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Dr. Scher.
Eastgate?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Peterson?
Yes.
Hager?
Yes. Item 3, focus on success. Dr. Fosnot, we're postponing that till the next meeting, is that
Yeah,
correct?
my apologies, board members, but we had a passing of a family member for our presenter this evening, so we're just pushing it off one meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Fosnot. Item 4 is public comment. The board recognizes the central role that parents play in the education of their children and supports active parent involvement in the education process. The board's practice of public comment reflects and aligns with policy BCBA and the spirit of its intent. For classroom issues, it's best to follow the chain of command: teacher, principal, assistant superintendent, and superintendent. For district issues, please reach out to Dr. Fosnot. If you do speak tonight, we simply ask that you be responsible, be helpful, and be respectful. Our BPS students deserve to have adults model the expectations that we have for them. Groups are urged to select one spokesperson. Individuals will be limited to no more than 4 minutes and will be notified with 30 seconds remaining to conclude their remarks. The board will not debate issues as presented, but will take such matters under advisement. With that, please stand and approach the podium if you would like to speak tonight. Seeing no one, public comment is closed. Item 5, R4 personal development and community ready. Dr. Fosnot.
Yeah, good afternoon, board members. Nice to see all of you. We have R4 personal development community ready for you to receive this evening, and I would invite to the podium Dr. Johnson.
Thank you, President Hager and members of the board. Tonight, as we take a look at community-ready personal development, we are bringing this forward with the recommendation of accepting it for making reasonable progress.
Dr. Johnson, is that mic on?
We'll start again.
There you go.
Thanks. President Hager and members of the school board, we appreciate time to come before you and talk about personal development, community-ready. Tonight, we are bringing forward this report with a recommendation for it to be accepted as making reasonable progress with exception. There were 12 indicators, and 8 of those were making reasonable progress, and 4 of those were making reasonable progress with exception. And we'll get into a few details with none of the indicators failing to make that progress there at the time. So as we take a look at this, personal development is split into 2. One is on community ready, and another that you'll receive next month is regarding student behavior. And so today we focus on that community ready. You know, as we know, before empowering every learner to thrive, we used to talk about being college, career, and community ready. And again, when we talk about raising young people, my daughters included, I hope that we're raising them to be good people that you would want to be your neighbors as well. And when we look at that, what does it mean to be vested as a member of your community? So part of that is an emphasis upon career exploration. And again, we've done some tightening and some increasing of what it means to be career ready. And so our career advisors are proud to announce, because we do have such a strong commitment from the board on down in our community regarding career and technical education, and just vested interest in, are you ready for that next step when you get that diploma, whatever it means, that we had 100% of our 12th graders completing that career exploration experience, far exceeding the 50%. Again, we're working on being tight on what that definition means and what the criteria is and how we record that. We continue to see good involvement in our middle school sports and activities. We have 83% of our students that are self-identifying as being involved in a sport, extracurricular, co-curricular clubs, activities. Again, I believe that every parent sends their kids wanting them to be safe and be able to find their academic niche, but also feel like they can belong. And so we know that there are some students that might be involved in activities outside of school. But again, we hope that everyone can find their people and make their connection there, especially in middle school, high school. We start to have those plethora of opportunities for them. We do know that in high school, some of that stops and drops. But again, someone might be working. That might be their passion. They might be working on their farm, ranch, or just working another job, and that becomes a priority. And so we're proud that that number continues to be above the target and is at 61%. We see that most of our students continue to self-manage their own behaviors and be able to take care of their business, and we want them to be, we always say the ability to be a self-advocate as well as to be able to manage your time and act accordingly. So again, we're seeing great growth there. One of the areas that we've put an emphasis the last few years has been for the secondary. We've transitioned away from what we used to do, respect, responsibility grades, and kind of as the side, we are now expanding what we've been doing for several years and actually led the state and became a model for the career readiness practices, CRPs for short, another alphabet soup, but career readiness practices related originally from our CT, but I know board member Lee at the time has also had great conversation. Again, we want people to show up on time. We want them to be good collaborators in the workplace. Those are important skills, and being able to have those be standalone, not only to be emphasized, but also to be so important that we want to report and have a discussion with parents and students about where their sons and daughters are in relationship to that, as well as them to self-reflect and see where can I get better in addition to my academic standards. So again, we've scaled that now not only in our career and technical ed classes and coursework is not only at the Career Academy, but throughout our high schools, but now into all of our schools in our middle school and high school. Again, teams are working to refine that. We're only in our second year of implementation. We see some areas where we can continue to see some growth. It becomes one of those tricky ones I think the board can talk about. We did see a slight decrease of 2.3% in our students enrolled in advanced or upper level courses. Again, yet 72% of our students are in that. And what decisions are they making? Perhaps a course isn't coded as that, but it's the right course for them to have selected. Again, I would not be too concerned, but that is a decrease, and so that is noted. We did see a slight decline, 4.6% of students reporting engagement in challenging work. Again, I'd be careful looking for trends versus being too concerned about a few data points up and down year to year, but if that tends to grow multiple years, then we'd need to kind of pull back and take a look at that. We want students to be, I always say calculated risk-taking, although that's not the way the question was posed, but we want people to take risks and be able to put themselves in uncomfortable situations so that they can learn and they can grow. And they can see that perhaps they can be successful in a different area. We want them to persevere. I think athletics and activities, sometimes, those values are caught more so than taught. You learn perseverance sometimes, even if you don't win a state championship. We had our cross country, had a great showing, yet there was still only one person that won the race and one team that won the collective. But yet they persevere and we learn together and I think grow leaps and bounds from those experiences. We also see opportunities for continuing at our elementary and our middle school with that self-initiation, which is below some of the targets of what we would like. We have lots of work, K-12, around our instructional frameworks that are trying to emphasize the learning environment, having students engage in those things, not just in extracurriculars, but rather in their core educational experience throughout the day. We continue to do some work in making sure our social-emotional learning supports and our curriculum is aligned with our district goals, being well-rounded and where we can support students. We have a task force, as you've heard, maybe a few items at times about authentic and personalized learning. That intersects especially with some of the work that we've been doing at where can we grow intentionally at the middle school, but also throughout the K-12, where we can have opportunities to make sure that kids see themselves in their future and in their coursework. And as we had earlier talked about the career readiness practices, we've now started to report on those a little bit more intentionally. At this point, we wouldn't make any recommendation for changes of policy. We really do believe that there's a great foundation to continue to build upon the skills, the resilience, and the community readiness that I think our district really stands above and beyond with that intentional work. So at this point, I'd stand for any questions.
Board members, any questions or comments? Mr. Eastgate.
It's somewhat of a question, Dr. Johnson, a little bit more of a pondering maybe, but just something for us to think about. I was joking with people here earlier about things in the classroom that go on between getting a grade and also the learning process, right? And last week, Dr. Fosnot and I were at the ND CEL, so the North Dakota Council of Educational Leaders panel, and we heard from a young lady that was a senior at not in our district, but she was sharing some experiences. Do you remember this, Dr. Fosnot? And she commented how she's taking AP classes and honors classes, and she's getting a grade less than what she would maybe be capable of if it wasn't an honors class. And just the friction that occurs from that. And so when I look at indicator 2, we do see in our 9 to 12, right? They're less apt to want to take educational risks. And so again, like I said, I don't have a direct question for you on it, but it is something I wonder as a parent and also observing from students who, I mean, that young lady in particular, I think Dr. Fosnot offered her a job. Just because she was really exceptional.
If she said yes, that would have been a good risk take.
That would have been a great risk. So anyway, again, it's an open-ended question for discussion, but I just think it's something for us to pay attention to and think about as we look at, even as a parent, do you instruct your kid to take the class that's going to get them that A, or are we trying to, obviously, learning is a big part of our process. So I don't know if you have any comments or thoughts about that.
I think that there's a tension that exists there, and I think that's a good tension, but it's something that's, again, I believe all of our relationships with our teachers, and I will say without getting into details, I have kids that have gone through the system and one that's currently in it, and it's to that. We want you to be challenged. We want you to take that risk take. So one thing that we have intentionally put in there is that there are some weighted grades that do occur. So sometimes that can take a little bit of the sting off of a GPA and allow, hey, I might get an A in regular, U.S. history or whatnot, but I'm willing to take that risk and take the AP class, and if I get a B+, it might be a little, but it doesn't affect my GPA. Of course, now it's there. Now, one of the little wrinkles is if you sign up for dual credit, it's still going to be recorded as that letter grade. So again, those are things that we're having to try to navigate. But I think great teachers like one offer, the ability to be like, hey, I've been there and I've received a B in college and still been pretty successful too. So when a teacher, I think, can try to share that with a student, perhaps that creates a little bit of that safe space and risk taking. But again, there is a lot of pressure, as you I think allude to, whether it's the viewpoint of scholarships and perfection, but also it's messy. And I respectfully will say to my own daughters and say to other people too, that's why they call it learning. If you knew it already, you wouldn't be experiencing that. So that's sometimes maybe sounds nicer than it is, but I think what I'm going to go back to is that ultimately if parents and teachers can form that partnership around and with the student to be able to have that safe space for conversation, that's where hopefully there's that guidance and the nudge and we gotcha, not gotcha, but like we got you, and it may not be the grade that you want end result, but hopefully there is learning along the way. That being said, there's a lot of pressure, and I understand that.
Mr. Lee.
Thank you, President Hager. I just think this is worth reiterating because it's so important and we've talked about it so often, but that teacher engagement and parent engagement are what oftentimes drives student engagement, right? And that's where student achievement happens. So it's so important for our parents to be involved alongside our teachers. We got incredible teachers in this district that do everything they can for kids, and if parents can come alongside and partner with them and push their kids into uncomfortable places to do hard things, great things happen. So,
well stated.
Good report. Yep.
Dr. Fawcett?
Yeah, I would add to Board Member Eastgate's comments that on the student who I did offer a job to because she was going into elementary education, brilliant, was in a school that probably identified only one valedictorian. So you get caught in that selection of one, where bigger system, we do that a different way, which hopefully our kids don't have to be put in that pressure cooker of a choice for like she was, but she was brilliant. And the other thing I think that to add, Mr. Eastgate, off your comments, is we had a panel of kids from across the state, exceptional young people, and it kind of sings in here too, because they talked about student voice. Are we talking to kids? Are we engaging them in the learning? Are we making learning real? Are you making it meet what I need as a kid? And they really challenged us as on the second day, I think after the panel discussion, they really challenged us directly that we as educational leaders need to start doing that more. We need to start engaging with kids, which I think might buoy some of our results here if we took that really intentionally. And I'll just point out quickly, you've heard me talk about it before, those career-ready practices is a great transition for BPS. Other schools need to follow it and model it. It's the right work to get our kids ready for the workforce. And the other one is that career exploration experience. You saw that on indicator 4 at the end, one of the final pages, 14. That is now, it is reflected now by our counselors reporting it, not our kids, but our kids all are getting an experience where they get to go see the work site, they get to see jobs, they get to see those experiences. You might have seen some already at the Career Academy that were put out by this our kids were engaging in to see jobs just in our community. I know we had Bismarck PD, Fire Department, National Guard at one just recently at the Career Academy. So I think getting kids engaged about careers early, getting them the right skills is getting them all ready for the workforce, which is good. So thank you, Dr. Johnson, for a good report.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Ms. Peterson?
I was just going to make a motion unless we have
Go ahead.
additional. I was going to say, with respect to our 4 personal development, community ready taken as a whole, I would move that we find it making reasonable progress with exception.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Dr. Scher?
Lee,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Eastgate,
Yes.
Hager.
Yes. Item B, GC5, Board Member Committees. So this will be our public reading of this policy. The board may create committees if they are deemed helpful to the board in the performance of its responsibilities. If committees are established, they will have be used exclusively to support the work of the board as described in policy GC3, and will never be created or used to assist the superintendent in operational areas. The board committees and other such entities, by whatever name created by the board, will not direct, advise, assist, or oversee the staff. Committees customarily will prepare recommendations for board consideration. Board committees will have no authority over staff and may exercise demands on staff time or organizational resources only to the extent authorized in this policy. 2, board committees may not speak or act for the board. The responsibilities and authority of all the board committees are carefully stated in this policy to assure that the committees fully understand their duties and the extent of authority, and to assure the committee work will not usurp or conflict with the board's own authority or conflict with authority delegated to the superintendent. 3, all board committees are considered to be ad hoc or temporary. The termination date of each committee is listed in this policy. Committees may be renewed or reauthorized upon their expiration, but unless the board acts to renew the committee's existence, it shall cease to exist upon the date specified. 4, board committees may or may not include members of the board. 5, all board committees are listed. That concludes the reading of GC5 board member committees. Board members. Seeing no comments, I'd entertain a motion. Mr. Eastgate?
President Hager, I would make a motion that we retain GC5 board committees.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none. Dr. Scher.
Peterson,
Yes.
Eastgate,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Hager.
Yes. Mr. Eastgate.
President Hager, I would also make a motion that we are in compliance with GC5 board committees.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none. Dr. Scher.
Eastgate,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Hager.
Yes. Item 6 is matters reserved for board action. Item A is R3 behavior revisions. Dr. Fosnett.
Yes, we shared this with you last meeting, so I just stand for any questions you might have for this before you finish your second reading.
Board members, any comments, questions based on our second look at this? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I would move to approve the revised coherent governance results policy R3, personal development behavior, and the revised supporting indicators as presented for the second and final reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none. Dr. Scher.
Eastgate,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Hager.
Yes. Item 6B, board member school visits. Ms. Peterson, I believe you have one.
I do. I had the pleasure of going back to Wachter Middle School last week. And, I've been back there a couple of different times. My children all went there. I do no longer have a child in Wachter after many, many years of having all three boys go through there. So it was nice to go back and then not necessarily just always as, conferences and everything else. But so I got to meet with Sharon Esplund, who is the principal there. And, obviously, I have a really strong relationship, not only with Sharon as a previous employee of the district and worked really closely with her, but also as somebody who was leading the school that my kids went to. So it was really nice to have just a heartfelt visit. And I do think that sometimes it's both good and bad when we have such a solid relationship with some of these folks or our own children's schools, because it's nice to be able to go in and then just really, really talk. But we were able to kind of get past some of that and really she showcased a few things that are kind of evident. When we talk about we're doing the community forums and some of the other pieces about our long-range facility planning, and that had never really come up in any of my previous conversations with Wachter, because I was always going again as kind of a parent, and so I'll share some of that. But then also, I do think that what is evident when you walk into the doors at Wachter is the strong relationships and the deep care for its students. You have a lot of teachers who've been there for a long time. The leadership team is really strong, and I think it shines through kind of in everything that they do. And I will say with confidence that Wachter's culture is one where educators really know their kids and has a really strong foundation. One thing I think, though, that kept kind of resonating with Sharon and my conversation was that although that is the goal at Wachter, you've got a different demographic feeding into it. There's a lot of at-risk students. She did say that it is getting harder, to know as many students, just the size of the teams and the size of the kids that they're seeing, especially kind of like at-risk students. And I think we've talked about that in here before, and how many students at risk are on those teams that make it a little bit more challenging for them to meet those needs. So I think that what I kind of observed is just even as we're talking about kind of the work that they have around kind of collective efficacy and the really strong leadership that we see Sharon and Mr. Hinderer and Mrs. Ettinger do in terms of just, strong PLCs and the teamwork that they have with those high expectations and rigor, which again, Wachter, I think has it. And but it's coupled with this intentional increase in sort of those wraparound supports that have to happen. And that does kind of, that increase about both of those things is probably, I'm just making some guesses, contributing to some of when we see teachers, struggling, with recruitment and retention and just those high expectations. That's where I think they're feeling it, is that they want to have those high expectations, but also those high wraparound supports. So I think that that is just something that is constantly, we talked earlier just about the tension between rigorous standards and high grades. Like, I mean, I think that's a tension that we're going to see continue to exist, and something that I think as a board, we're looking at all the time as we think about just the budget and everything else, about how do we keep those high expectations, but also continue to fund the supports. So one of the things, I mean, she just talked about the grade level teams, and I thought it was so echoed because earlier last week, or right before the school visit, we had a BPS Foundation meeting, and we had also talked about just kind of just middle school as that catch-all. It's that really important bridge from our really strong elementaries and our really strong secondary, and sometimes I think they're getting the brunt of those high number of students that they're striving to impact. So we had that conversation with the arts and just those numbers really climbing at the middle school level, and then kids taper off into like all of their different pathways that we were just talking about before. And so I think that tension and really thinking about middle schools as that audience where kind of all students are getting all things really resonated with me, and really thinking then of our at-risk programs and so on. So I'm hopeful that when we're thinking about some of those structures, that some of those class sizes and other things, it's not really just class sizes, because she didn't really talk about, I think that stays relatively smart, but it's the team sizes and how many students are on, whether we call them caseloads, or how many students each individual teacher are seeing every single day. And I think, for those of us on the board that have either family members or previous work experiences in the middle school, I think we've seen that, how that tension continues to grow. And then one of the things that I think that, again, I had never gotten the tour of the locker rooms or of, some of the facilities the way that I had seen it this time. And I was really appreciative of that, because I know that that's going to come up in some of those community forums and some of the things that they are requesting. And so she was able to kind of show some of just the public areas. One of the things I had never thought of, even though many of us have participated in all school assemblies that Wachter hosts at different times, and they've always been outdoors. And I just thought that that was like a really cool thing because they were outdoors at the end of the school year. But she emphasized that they actually don't have the space to have all of their kids and their families and everybody else in one spot like the rest of our schools, most of them, especially our secondary schools, do. And so that was just something that she acknowledged. And then, most of that comes from the gyms being separated by a brick wall or a rock wall or whatever we want to call it. And then also just like really looking at kind of the public facilities, and when they're hosting different events, they're tucking through some of the restrooms and then the locker rooms just not being at capacity for how much growth that school has seen over the years. So I do think that was really good to see. And then also just reiterate as we think about the long range facility planning. So, we always talk about the new schools, and we know that those have been the focus because our growth was needed. And now I think in these community forums, I hope the public is using this as an opportunity to attend one of those. I think we're still, 6 left, maybe? Mm-hmm. 6 left. So hopefully the public will find a time on the schedule to go in and advocate for some of your opinions about the different schools. They don't just have to be the schools that they're hosted at. And I do think that we are in a space of needing, we've had a lot of deferred maintenance, that Dr. Scherer talks to us a lot about as we've made way for other budget decisions, but some of those are kind of coming to a head, I think, as we look at some of our facilities. So excited to continue to hear the results of that and so on. And I just think that Wachter kind of stands as a testament to what our relationships, the high expectations, dedicated staff, and it also serves to remind us of that we need the structure, the support, and the space to make all of that happen together. So you can't ever just do one without thinking about the other. And so it's a constant tension between those two pieces. So I'm excited, hopefully to address these challenges. And I think that as we look at that, they're going to be critical to ensure that Wachter, all our middle schools, all of our schools can continue to build that strong bridge. So it was a great visit. I want to thank Sharon for her time. I want to thank the Wachter team for it was a busy Monday morning right at 8 a.m. So it's always nice to walk around and see just the kids coming in, the kids, the staff, busy hustling people, from place to place, and just a really good culture down there. So thanks, Sharon, and thanks the team, and thanks to all of you guys for listening. Thanks.
Thanks, Ms. Peterson. Well, I've got a school visit I'll do here quick, too. I had the opportunity last week to go to South Central. Principal Joe Calvoda, we spent quite a bit of time in his office just chatting. Talked about some kind of district-wide decisions that I guess we as a board have made that have impacted his staff as well. So it was interesting getting his take on how some of the things that we've done that maybe you wouldn't necessarily associate with impacting directly South Central kind of did in a roundabout way. The one thing that was a little bit different, having been in South Central a number of times this year, was the addition of Renew Ed down there. So now you've got a portion of the building that is housing Renew Ed. So it was a little bit different of a change, and Joe talked about how they had to maybe adjust a little bit, kind of how they utilize some space to adjust with that. But beyond that, things have been going well with that change. As we in this room know, because we've been there, all of us, a number of times at South Central, that it's just a unique place. When you talk about the students that go there, the plans for them it's an individualized learning environment. So it's not exactly the same as what we would see at the other high schools that we go to visit. For an example, talking about the staff down there, Joe can't say enough good things about that staff, and they have to have such patience, and they have to care for those kids a little bit more than maybe the other schools do. I know it's not a totally fair comment, but you guys know what I'm saying. Is it's that compassion side to really help those kids. So one of the things that we had noticed is you walked into the gym and the gym teacher is playing badminton with a kid, and Joe had mentioned, well, it's one of those, depending on how the kids are functioning on a different day. You as a gym teacher, you have to plan for, I could have 8 kids one day, or I could have 1. And having those lessons plans and being flexible. So that was one of the things that he had mentioned when we were walking around. The one thing that really struck me, and it does every time I walk in there, is the generosity of our community. When you walk in and you see the perishable food items, the non-perishable food items, the toiletries, the things that have been donated by our community that are there for those students in need, it's moving to walk into that room and just see all sorts of food items and toiletries. And that Joe had mentioned, all this was donated by Century Baptist. And then another example of kind of our community coming together is, so for Thanksgiving, they're putting together like a little dinner meal for all of the students. Well, they ordered what they thought were going to be like chunks of ham. They got an entire pork flank. So then Joe's like, what am I going to do with this? This doesn't even fit in a single oven. Well, through talking and connecting with the community, 3B Meats took that pork flank, cut them down into 4-pound chunks, vacuum sealed it. They have them in the freezers down there. They're putting together kits for them. So again, these community partners donating time and skills to do these kinds of things is just amazing to me. And one last note, Joe and I were talking about, how they are unique down there. And one of them is, we as the board do a lot of data-driven results. We sit up here and we look at things and we look at the data. And he emphasized, and he couldn't be more right, that the data-driven results just don't work for South Central because of those individual learning plans. And he gave me an example just recently of a student who at South Central, he said, she was tough, and we worked hard with her, and we got her to that finish line. And he said, you just don't know. The data wouldn't capture what it was like for her in that moment. And he said 9 years later, she called him and said, hey, Mr. Calvoda. I'm in college right now, going to school to be an educator. Because of the impact you guys had at me at South Central, I want to be a teacher and give back. And that was 9 years after the fact. So very cool story. As you guys know, because you've been there, South Central, just a unique place, just a great spot. So that's my visit. Item 7 on the agenda is the consent agenda. What are the wishes of the board?
I would
Mr. Lee.
move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second. Dr. Scher.
Lee,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Eastgate,
Yes.
Hager.
Yes. Item 8, superintendent's report. Dr. Fosnot.
I will defer the financial report to Dr. Scher.
Thank you, Dr. Fosnot. President Hager, members of the board, tonight we have our actually first financial report because the board approved the budget most recently. The format should look very similar or familiar. The one thing I will say with the kind of the hiccup that we had with the tax credit and how that, so we adjusted analytics to kind of, we adjusted the analytics. I was going to say we tricked the analytics, but we adjusted the analytics to adjust for that. You can see that kind of how we're trending, actually trending ahead of projections on revenue and behind on expenditures, which are both positives for the district. So that is good. I really don't have anything that I feel like I would need to point out to the board that's out of line. You can, I guess I would answer any questions that the board would have related to the financial report.
I don't see any, Dr. Scher. Thank you. B, transportation update. Dr. Fosnot.
Oh, you made that really fast. I wasn't that ready, Dr. Scher. Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to give a little update on transportation. We continue to do work in this area. We just recently been giving updates to our operational excellence group as well. So I thought I would just share with the broader community. Over the past month, I think I'd mentioned earlier that Mr. Middlestead and his team were going to be reviewing our routes and applying kind of our revised stop criteria to all of our stops and just making sure they met that criteria. He informed me last week that they had gone through 160 general education routes and ensured that they had driven every rural route. So if it's outside the city limits, they had driven all of them. And they had tightened up some stops in areas that had little or no protection from wind or had some visibility concerns. So they did move some stop locations. And using the stop guidance that we'd provided, they did indicate that they had made 56 stop changes. And they're hundreds of stops. So we're not talking 15%, we're talking much less than that, but hundreds of stops. They had made some adjustments and really thanked him today. Got a chance to meet Mr. Middlestead and just thank him for that work and his team because that was important work. Let's make sure before we get into deep fall, winter, that we had made those adjustments to address any concerns that parents or families or we had. So I'm really pleased with that. The other thing that we'd mentioned, operational excellence, and I want you to know we're shooting for a week of November 3rd, is to have a survey go out to parents in regard to transportation, busing, bell time. And we kind of weeding through a lot of questions. We had some draft questions we've been trying to process through, but try to get something that's manageable for parents to give us their feedback as far as our new two-tier busing system, stops, and where stops are located at now, just transportation in general, and then also how you feel about bell time, and trying to just capture some of their thoughts. So we hope to have that out again that week, and then we'll be using that to inform operational excellence and bring that back also to the board so you can see those. I think that's good information as we get into the other part of transportation. That's the RFP process. That's out now. Dr. Scher has released that. That's all those proposals are due to his office by 2 o'clock, I think, on Friday this week, Halloween, scary time to get those. But get all those, then start to compile all that information before we make recommendations for the next year. So I think we're doing the work, trying to get ready and address some of the challenges that we've had, but also pre-plan so we can really make some decisions really before that early January time so we can plan. Just takes so much, especially if we make schedule changes, route changes, it takes a lot of time to get that work done. So we have to get that done early in the season. So I'd stand for any questions on transportation. Okay. And I really only had one thing. It wasn't on the agenda today, but I'm just going to say it to you and I'll say it to the audience at large. Drive safe. You probably heard today on social media that we had an unfortunate accident with a student at 7th Street right outside of BHS. We had an accident with a student at Century last week. We all probably have stories, right, of how we interact with drivers or other drivers in our community every day. And I would tell you there was some question about how we communicate when those events happen. I would tell you the event last week at Century, we did not send out anything big social media post on that. It was, I won't say minor, but it was a less, didn't affect transportation and have a big police presence that caused an attention as much as the one today. Today shut down most of 7th Street, became not only disturbing to our student and our BHS community, but the community in general. So I think that and timing, CHS was at the end of the day, almost 4 o'clock, where today is right in noon, right in the middle of the day. Highly noticed, highly disruptive to the community and the BHS community. So just there are different variables that go into how we communicate that, but I would like to also say when we're communicating, there were several questions today about concerned about parents' own child. Like, how do I know my child's okay? And that really goes back to our cell phone policy and kids not having their phone directly on them. And how do I know how my kid's okay? I want to assure parents directly that if your child's involved with something like those events today, we are as rapidly as humanly possible contacting the parents who need to know. Are we contacting all 1,300 students' parents? No, not necessarily right away. We're contacting the parents who need to know. It's kind of like calling the accident happens, being an ex-firefighter. I hope that when the fire happened at their house, the first call was to us, and then it was to their neighbor or the family. We're making calls to the people who need to know immediately, and then we're working out that circle. And families of children affected are in very close circle to that decision-making and how fast we get communication out. If your child's not affected and you're way out in the circle, probably not as fast. And it may not be anything where we're necessarily putting anything out on social media to inform all the masses. That'll depend on the nature of the event and the time of the event and the disruption in the community. But I do want to, before my final comments on this, just make sure to extend heartfelt prayers to our student today, their family. I also want to extend that to the driver of the vehicle. In no way, shape, or form, I'm sure that they intend that to happen in their day, right? So my prayers go to them. Our people who responded today, absolutely A1. They were there, they took care of our kids, they responded as best as they could, and not of all of them are always as trained like EMS workers. They did their very best, and they did the great job. So really proud of them. So my prayers go to them. And just ending today is just be careful. If we can, eyes up, looking out the window. We all get distracted. We all get distracted by devices. Those are not just around our schools either. I know people are saying slow down around schools. I just say we could just slow down in general. Just try to, particularly with cold weather, rainy weather like today, it's probably better for the entire community just to take an extra beat, slow down, try to be safe as we can. It's good for us. But in regard to today, it was a tough day for a student and a family, and we just hope their recovery is positive and heading in the right direction this evening. So I'd answer any questions you had over that.
Thank you, Dr. Fosna. Well said. Obviously, as board members, that is a concern for us too when you hear something like that happening at your school. So we're definitely praying for the families. Thank you, Dr. Fosna. With that, down to item 9, executive session. Ms. Peterson.
I would make a motion to enter executive session pursuant to North Dakota Century Code, Section 4404-19.1, Section 9, for the purpose of discussing negotiation strategy.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Dr. Scher.
Peterson,
Yes.
Eastgate,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Hager.
Yes. With that, we will now move into executive session.